Hi, everybody. This is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your horoscopes for the month of April 2019. This is the Sun and Rising sign horoscope for Aries. All right, let's take a look. So there's kind of a concentration of energy or astrological symbolism in both your first house and 10th house this month. We're going to talk about that, as well as your 12th house and your 9th house. Now, the reason for this is that I've kind of grouped things thematically this month. Let me show you how this is going to work. Everything is happening at once this month, first of all. So when I was approaching it like I usually do, sort of breaking it up day by day, I just was like, this is not going to work because everything's happening at once. So let's break it up thematically. So let's just notice what's happening at the very beginning of the month. For some reason, my outer planets and Chiron aren't in right now. Let me go ahead and put them in. All right. So at the very beginning of the month, as the month opens, Mercury and Neptune are getting together. And then by about April 12th, we're going to have a square from Mercury to Jupiter, from the 12th house to the 9th house. Then you're going to see Venus getting between April 9th and 10th, getting into the conjunction with Neptune, and then by the 15th, making a square to Jupiter in the 9th house. So what that means is that between basically the 1st and the 15th of the month, you have a lot of action between these planets in Pisces in your 12th house and Jupiter in the 9th house. So what can you expect? Well, first of all, the 12th house is a house that was traditionally associated with anything that would take us off course, anything that might take you away from the beaten trail, anything that might have you wandering, maybe self-destructive. So it's not an ideal house. Sometimes it's related to things like contemplation or solitude or aloneness, which can be great. But you're also looking at a theme in the 12th house of potentially losing your way, doubts, sickness, sometimes mental illness, loss or abandonment, isolation. These are all 12th house themes, right? So when you see a lineup of planets in the 12th house, we'll just kind of keep it general, you know that you might be going through some, especially with Pisces, some deeper emotional turmoil this month, some doubts, sometimes with Venus in particular, troubles in love or relationships, or troubles with friends or women. And sometimes there's a deeper questioning that's happening with Mercury in the 12th house. And it's not always easy to see the forest from the trees. We can get buried in something very particular that we're struggling with and have a hard time getting out of it to get that bigger perspective. But that's why the squares to Jupiter in the 9th house are going to be really helpful this month, because whatever inner turmoil you're going through, these planets in the 12th are making a square to Jupiter in the 9th, which should make the search for higher purpose or higher meaning or higher guidance a part of the process. And Jupiter can really deliver the goods, because Jupiter's in its home sign this month in your 9th house, which is a house that gives us that higher sense of meaning, truth, purpose, guidance, etc. So I really like this, even though the 12th house is a little troublesome, the square to Jupiter should guide you through. So I think about this as a time of, questioning or going through a little bit of turmoil this month, with the potential to find teachers or teachings or some kind of higher guidance that leads you to the right choice, the ethical choice, the the appropriate sort of philosophical conclusion. So I take that as a plus overall. Look for that sense of liftedness and maybe getting some higher perspective between like the 10th and the 15th, around that time. I think the first part of the month could be like you're wandering a little bit more through the fog, through the uncertainty, through a little bit of that emotional turmoil. So look for that the first part of the month. Things clearing up when both Mercury and Venus hit squares to Jupiter in the 9th house by about mid-month. So that's the first big set of transits this month. The next one is, the moon cycle this month is in your home sign. Happy birthday season if you're an Aries sun. And what we're seeing is a new moon around April 5th in the first house, and that is connected to the sun will then let's see, by the 10th through the 13th, the sun will then get into squares with Saturn and Pluto. So anytime you have a new moon in your first house, it's a moment of kind of renewal, personal renewal, or resetting, or kind of maybe a new beginning of some kind that's usually revitalizing, or an emphasis sometimes on your own health, and getting back to yourself somehow. So that's good. It's nice to have that, every year, to have a new moon in your first house at that time of year. It usually feels pretty good. But the squares to Saturn and Pluto that are coming through from the sun, start the new moon on the 5th, and then from the 10th to the 13th, you have these squares up to Saturn and Pluto in the 10th. That's your house that's related with work and professional life and action in the world, reputation, things like that. So I wonder if there isn't going to be a little bit of stress or tension between whatever new beginning you may be endeavoring to begin right now, like some new project or remaking yourself, or just kind of getting your energy back, or something like that, and some kind of pressure, constraint, limitation, or obligations, duties, responsibilities in the workplace. That's that Saturn-Pluto presence in the 10th house. The personal transformation is tied in a somewhat tense relationship this month with professional matters. And this could be also part of what you're struggling through, where the inner turmoil is coming from, and part of why you're seeking that higher guidance about the middle of the month as well. So by the full moon, which is April 19th, the full moon will fall in Libra in the house of relationships, and will square Saturn and Pluto again. So something about this month is leading you toward greater balance and harmony with others, or balancing and maybe balancing your priorities in terms of the things you need to do for yourself, the things that you may be called upon to look after in your relationships, your intimate relationships, and pressures that are mounting at work. So it's a pretty big month because each of these houses are called cardinal houses. They put a lot of pressure on us. We'll see what happens. But again, the full moon on the 19th really focused on relationships and the need to balance and harmonize things with others and at work. So the self-focus of Aries this month, the sun in your home sign, and the new moon, the focus by the full moon on others and balance and relationships. The T-square presence coming from Saturn and Pluto, the weight and intensity and sometimes limiting forces around work or duty or obligation. So it's a big month. Now, when you get to between April 19th and 23rd, Venus and Mercury, these two planets right here, are going to enter Aries and move through conjunctions with Chiron between the 19th and the 23rd of April. That's going to offer you a chance for a level of personal healing. Chiron is the wounded healer and is related in the first house to self-knowledge as well as to personal healing. So it's a moment of really working very deeply into certain personal wounds. For Arians, sometimes that's the feeling of having to be number one, the difficulty surrendering to someone or something higher. Sometimes the wound is around aggression or assertiveness, or kind of that yang masculine quality, and not knowing how to yield to make room for others. Sometimes it's impulsiveness or frustration, or the feeling that you have to prove yourself. Whatever it might be, Mercury and Venus moving over Chiron are going to bring up the need to discuss or communicate and learn more about your wounds, perhaps within the context of relationships, with Venus also transiting over Chiron. And then also you're looking at the potential for a, sometimes I think of Chiron also as just the presence of learning and sometimes teaching as well. The possibility that you're learning and teaching someone or something, that you're taking on a greater role as a mentor or a leader and using what you know or using your experience to guide others. That may also be part of this transit. But watch for that between the 19th and the 23rd, an emphasis on healing words, on healing communication, on healing in friendships and love relationships or with women. And it should be pretty pronounced. Around the same time between April 20th and the 23rd, that's why I said everything's happening at once this month, the sun will enter your second house of money and resources and conjoin erratic and unpredictable Uranus. However, Uranus also brings breakthroughs and unexpected epiphanies, so you might see a little bit of a moment between the 20th and the 23rd where there's illumination and some kind of breakthrough around money or finances. So that could be actually really interesting. But don't be surprised if it's, might be a little erratic as well. Finally, on the 26th and the 27th, Mars, your ruling planet in the third house of Gemini, will be squaring Neptune in the 12th house. Now, this is interesting because we are obviously, we always want to track, for Arians, we always want to track Mars. When Mars is in the third house in Gemini, it's very mental, it's very communicative. Sometimes it deals with mental, verbal conflicts or conflicts with siblings or kind of an aura of conflict mentally or verbally in your day-to-day kind of immediate environment. But the square to Neptune kind of has a Joan of Arc energy to it, where you might be feeling the need to go on some kind of mental or intellectual crusade. The feeling of something that is pulling at you, some kind of imaginative or spiritual quest that's mental or intellectual. You want to be careful though, because this could, with Neptune in the 12th, be a little distracting. You want to be careful you're not tilting at windmills like Don Quixote. Like you're make sure that you're wherever your mind is going, wherever your thoughts are going, that you not follow Neptune into some kind of fool's crusade. So that's pretty strong around the end of the month. But it could also be about you're learning how to move through different kinds of self-limiting ideas and attitudes and beliefs, and doing some healing work as well. Because Mars Neptune can also be about healing the masculine, or healing that part of ourself that is so yang and so kind of assertive in sometimes an overpowering way. So possibly some healing as well. So it's a very interesting month. I'd love to hear how all of my Aries friends are doing, whether you're Aries rising or Aries sun. Stay in touch and let me know, and we will be back for another breakdown of May's astrology next month. Okay, take care.